Joining me here today is Nikki Budzinski, the representative for the Illinois 13th District. Good morning.
Good morning. Great
Thanks
to be here.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah, we appreciate it. Let's start off. You're doing a lot of press going around talking, obviously, about just over a month ago, the big, beautiful bill gets voted into law. This is something that you voted against every single time it came up.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. Why did you feel so important for you to voice your disapproval of the big, beautiful bill?
Well, I would say two big reasons in particular: the $900 billion of Medicaid cuts, what that's going to mean for health care in central and southern Illinois. I'm really concerned about that. I've spent a lot of time since I've been home in August visiting with healthcare providers and listening to constituents around the anxiety that they have about what those cuts are going to mean to our communities. We know in the state of Illinois between 9 and 11 hospitals in our rural communities are going to be on the watch list to making sure that they can stay open because a lot of the doors stay open to a lot of our rural hospitals because of those Medicaid dollars. You know, the second I would say is $187 billion of SNAP cuts. When I have visited the food banks in central and southern Illinois, what they're telling me is that they're seeing increased need, not decreased. And this is before this bill and the cuts actually take effect. So increased need, but less resources to actually address food insecurity. Those are the two big reasons, but I would just also say, there's a few others. I mean, $3.5 trillion of national deficit spending is in this bill, even when you take into account the deep cuts to Medicaid and to SNAP. And then lowering the corporate tax rate permanently, giving tax breaks out to the top 1% in this country. You know, I think we need middle class relief. There is some of that in this bill, but a lot of that is only temporary. It's not permanent.
Now, I know you and Senator Durbin have spent a lot of time, especially focusing on the hospital aspect.
Yeah.
You mentioned there are possibly 11, 12 rural hospitals on this watch list. Is there any sort of timeline for this watch list? Maybe walk our viewers through some of that, what that exactly means, this watch list, and when these things could start really, you know, you're claiming take effect.
Well, I think the Republicans were a little clever in this, in that a lot of these cuts don't take effect until after the election in November of 2026. But I do want to point out one thing that is going to go into effect just this year, and I think constituents are going to get notices about this, which is the expiration of the ACA premium tax credit. A lot of middle-class families take advantage of that tax credit to make sure that the marketplace for health care is affordable. The Republicans failed to include that in the big bill, and so without that inclusion, those tax credits are going to expire in January. Constituents in central and southern Illinois are going to get notices in October that their premiums are going to go up by at least $1,000. So that automatically is taking effect this year. It's going to make healthcare more expensive, let alone what is going to be happening in 2026 when we see the implications or the effects of these deep Medicaid cuts.
Yeah, what are the other things that you mentioned here in your press release to us, calling it the big ugly bill?
Right.
22,000 jobs lost in Illinois. Those are alarming numbers. Is that jobs that are already, people have already lost their jobs since this went into effect? Or is this a projection? Are those central Illinois jobs? Or those, talk us through some of those numbers.
Yeah, those are projected. I mean, both based on basically where healthcare cuts could potentially be made. I want to also mention one other thing that's in this big ugly bill, which is the elimination of a lot of the clean energy tax credits. We're building a lot of clean energy, new energy generation right here in central and southern Illinois. The Republicans kind of kneecapped that opportunity. We expect of those 22,000 jobs, 3,300 of them are going to come from just the clean energy sector, the inability for us to continue to build solar and wind right here in central Illinois. So it's really broken up by industry. And so it isn't just about the ramifications I've talked about, the lack of access to health care, the lack of access to food security, but I think we are going to see really deep job implications with this bill too.
I wanted to ask you something in the Big Beautiful Bill Act that gets a lot of talk is this mandate, worker mandate, 80 hours per month for ages 19 to 64. Where do you fall on that specifically? Is that something that you support, you don't support? Or is it something that in Illinois you could find a workaround for people? Or are you trying to at all?
Well, I think the Republicans were disingenuous about how they talked about what these work requirements are. Of course, we want everybody working, right? But the reality is most people, 64% of people on Medicaid today are already working. Most folks that are taking advantage of SNAP benefits are already working. But when we see the cost of the grocery store increasing, the cost of healthcare increasing, a lot of these families need additional assistance to make sure that they can provide health care to their families. So I just want to point that out, that I think it's a myth that, this idea that there's this kid living in his parents' basement that's just living off the government. That really is not the profile of the typical person on Medicaid. I also just want to mention too, one of the things that I think is going to be really onerous for families is right now, families that take advantage of Medicaid, I've met a mother in the district that has a disabled child. They utilize Medicaid dollars to make sure that disabled child gets access to health care. She has to reapply every year for Medicaid to qualify. There's nothing that changes about her daughter's diagnoses, but that's the process. But what Republicans did in this bill was now she's got to reapply twice. I mean, it really is additional paperwork requirements, bureaucracy that makes it more challenging.
Obviously, it did pass. You voted no against it every single time. We're talking about the big, beautiful bill. Before we move on from it, I just want to ask, is there anything that people in District 13 you think should actually benefit from the big, beautiful bill at all?
Yeah, I would highlight in particular the child tax credit. I'm a very big supporter of the child tax credit. That's actually just helping families keep more of what they've earned when they have children at home. When we see rising costs of childcare, it helps them keep a little bit more of their money so they can afford some of these things. I think that's always a good thing. They've extended or expanded that by a little bit. I'd like to have seen it expanded, obviously, by a little bit more. But I think that is a positive, and I think families will benefit from that.
I want to ask you about something that I find very interesting, and something that I'm sure you're very passionate about. It's legislation that you're behind, the Boots Act.
Yes.
Tell us about this. Maybe explain it to our viewers what this is and why it's important and why you're pushing for it.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, Belleville Boots is located in Belleville, Illinois. We have been championing increasing American manufacturing, creating opportunities to create more good-paying jobs right here in central and southern Illinois. Belleville Boots does that in Belleville, and one of the things that they actually manufacture is a very significant portion of our military service officers wear Belleville boots. They're American made. What the boots legislation would do is say, we want to make sure that our military service members are wearing American made boots. There are a lot of other foreign options for our soldiers to wear, produced in places like China. We think that in some ways this is a national security issue. We want to make sure that we're producing enough of the things that our service members need right here in the United States. That's a domestic benefit for us. It creates good paying jobs, and they're great boots. I've actually had the opportunity to visit the facility and meet with the workers, meet with the management. It's a great place.
Yeah, I can't imagine signing up to serve my country and then you get handed your uniform and it says made in China.
Exactly.
Exactly. It's quite shocking. So I definitely want to make sure I asked you about that. Recently, you talked about on social media, and you were just telling me here before we started as well, you spent some time in St. Louis. You met with the mayor of St. Louis. You said in social media, St. Louis is an essential partner to communities here in Illinois 13, which stretches from Champaign area through Decatur and Springfield all the way down to the East St. Louis area.
Right.
What can St. Louis do to partner in this creation, the foster a relationship that will benefit the Springfield, Decatur, Champaign communities, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, when you look at the western side of this district, the way I look at St. Louis is it's a regional partner. We want to see St. Louis be successful because then that creates opportunity on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. So meeting with the new mayor, Mayor Spencer, was an opportunity for us to talk about some of the great industries that we have in that region that benefit the Metro East and throughout central and southern Illinois. Illinois. One of the great assets we have that's just outside of my district, but I have a lot of folks that live in my district but work at Scott Air Force Base, what we can be doing to support and take a regional approach. She really liked that idea. I'd highlight in particular on the western side of the district, we're really leading in the aviation industry. We've got Boeing, Gulfstream, Westar. These are great aviation industry partners. We want to see them grow and thrive in the area. And I think having a good partnership with the mayor is just smart.
Yeah. A couple other things here I want to get to really quickly. Obviously, redistricting is one of the hot words and button topics nationally right now.
Yep.
We see what started in Texas, moving to California, the governor of New York talking about it. District 13 in Illinois gets a lot of attention when we talk about redistricting and the look and the shape of districts. Obviously, the Princeton University gerrymandering project gives Illinois an overall F grade. You represent Illinois 13. What are your thoughts on Illinois 13 as far as being held up in that public spotlight as far as a gerrymandered district?
Look, I would just say I didn't have a hand in drawing the district.
Yeah.
I decided to run in the district. Really proud to represent this district and to say that although it is very big, there's a lot of commonality from the western side to the eastern side of the district. I'm really proud to call Springfield home. I often say that the district is really stitched together by farmland. So no matter where you are in central and southern Illinois, we care a lot about corn and soybeans. We've got great universities within the 13th Congressional District. Obviously, the University of Illinois in Springfield right here, but Urbana-Champaign's campus, and then Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. There's a lot of commonality, and so I'm so honored to represent the district that was drawn, and continue to fight for the families, that I'm proud to represent in Washington.
I wanted to ask you about something you voted no on. Earlier this year, the Women and Girls Sports Act. You said very recently in a tweet on Women's Equality Day that you're fighting every day to restore reproductive freedom, close the gender wage gap, and achieve women's equality in every area of life. What in the Women's and Girls Sports Act, Protection of Women and Girls Sports Act, did you feel wasn't doing that? And so you're saying one thing, voting no on this. Where's the disconnect with that act, and why you feel it doesn't move women's equality forward?
Well, I think what that bill was really about was penalizing universities for the policies that they have on looking at women's sports and all the people that they're including in women's sports. I think that this is up to university policies as far as how they look at funding, who participates in girls' sports, who doesn't. But I think right now what you're seeing at the federal level is an assault on a lot of our university campuses around the policies that they take. I think that in voting against that bill, I thought it would unfairly penalize universities and the decisions that they need to be making in the best interest of the students.
Okay, and finally, before we let you go, in a year from now, we'll be in a very unique spot as far as what our country goes through as we prepare for the next election. Are you running again in Illinois 13? Have you thought about that? Have you made any sort of official declaration? If so, can you speak on that?
Yeah, of course. I'm really excited to be running for a third term to represent the 13th Congressional District. We're actually in the throes right now of doing petitions, so we've been circulating petitions to get on the ballot, which is, of course, the first most important step. But I look forward to, over this next year and a half, of continuing to meet with constituents, talk about the issues. I think it's two things. It's one, talking about my record, how I've delivered for the 13th Congressional District on the issues that matter most, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's helping to build out our bioeconomy right here in central Illinois. The Springfield Rail Project was something that I was incredibly proud to help bring back the dollars at the federal level to complete that project, talking about those real deliverables, but also holding this administration accountable. I mean, I think a lot of folks are scared right now about what they see that's happening just recently at the CDC, some of the decisions they've been making as it relates to public health, what's happening with the federal workforce. I think those are the kind of things. Want to hold this administration accountable but also focusing on delivering for the district. So we'll be talking about both these things as I reach out to voters and ask for their support.
Representative Budzinski, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to watch more videos from Fox Illinois.